The jungle was alive, but not in a peaceful way. It growled, hissed, and whispered strange sounds. Tall glowing trees reached for the sky, and thick vines crawled like snakes across the ground. The air was heavy, wet, and filled with the smell of wild flowers and something rotten. Jack moved carefully, each step slow and quiet. His boots sank into the soft, mossy ground. Jack was a human explorer, sent to this alien planet to find missing researchers. A distress signal had been picked up 2 days ago, and now he was the only one close enough to check it out. He had seen strange places before, but this jungle felt different. It felt hungry. He paused and scanned the trees with his visor. No heat signatures, just thick fog and endless green. His hand rested on the knife at his belt. He didn't like the silence. The birds had stopped calling. Then it came a scream, not a human scream. It was higher, softer, filled with panic. And it came from deep inside the jungle. Jack's heart jumped. He didn't know what kind of creature had made that sound, but he knew one thing. It was in pain. He took off running, dodging thick roots and thorny vines. The jungle fought back, slapping his face with leaves and pulling at his legs. But the scream came again, weaker this time. Jack knew he was getting closer. He slid down a slope and stopped at the edge of a small clearing. What he saw made him freeze. In the center of the clearing stood a giant plant, taller than a house. Its thick stem pulsed like a heartbeat, and its petals were open wide like a mouth. Inside the plant, wrapped in glowing vines, was a girl. Her skin was pale blue, and her hair floated around her like soft silk. She was being pulled inside slowly, as if the plant was eating her alive. Jack didn't think. He moved. He pulled out his flare gun and shot it toward the plant. The light hit the plant's skin and burned it slightly, making it hiss and close its petals halfway, but it didn't stop feeding. The girl let out another soft cry, her eyes half open. She was still alive. Jack ran to her, hacking at the vines with his knife. But the vines were thick and sticky, and every time he cut one, 2 more came crawling. The plant began to move, twisting its body to trap Jack as well. A large vine lashed toward him, slicing his shoulder armor. He winced but kept cutting. The girl was almost fully inside now. "Hang on," Jack whispered. Even though he knew she might not hear him, her fingers twitched weakly. He reached in, grabbing her arm. The plant tightened around her, trying to pull her deeper. Jack pulled harder, his feet sliding in the slime. He could feel the plant's heat, like a living furnace. Suddenly, a thick vine wrapped around his leg and yanked. Jack fell backward. Still holding the girl's arm, he gritted his teeth and grabbed a small torch from his pack. With one hand, he lit it and shoved it into the vine holding his leg. The plant screamed, yes, screamed, and the vine let go. Jack didn't wait. He pulled the girl out as the plant writhed and flailed its petals. The moment her body was free, the plant snapped shut behind them. Missing them by inches, they rolled onto the ground, both covered in thick green slime. The girl was unconscious, her chest barely moving. Her skin looked cold, too cold. Jack checked her quickly. She was alive, but weak. He looked around. The jungle was watching again, silent and still, but he knew they weren't safe yet. He picked her up carefully and whispered, "I got you out, but we need to move." As he carried her away, the jungle slowly came back to life. The birds chirped softly again. The leaves rustled with a light breeze. But Jack didn't look back. He had no idea who she was or what had happened to her. But he knew one thing. He wasn't going to let her die. Not here. Not like that. Asterisk. The air around them was heavy with mist. Every breath Jack took felt like pulling water into his lungs. He carried the alien girl carefully, her blue skin glowing faintly in the darkness. The green slime from the plant still dripped from her hair and arms, sticking to his hands. She was weightless, fragile, and cold like ice. Jack stopped for a moment, leaning against a twisted tree. His ears were alert, listening for movement. The jungle was never truly silent, but now every sound felt sharper. The memory of the plants. His still rang in his ears. He looked at the girl, her lips pale, her eyes closed. She was alive, but she was slipping away. Her faint breathing grew shallow. Jack lowered her gently onto the moss-covered ground and tried to clean the slime off her face. It wasn't just slime. It was like the plant had left a burning poison. On her skin, her veins glowed faintly under the surface, and Jack felt his chest tighten. If he didn't act fast, she wouldn't make it. The plant hadn't just swallowed her. It had tried to digest her. He could almost feel the strange energy still inside her body. Twisting like heat, Jack wasn't a medic, but he knew survival. Tricks, he knelt beside her, hands shaking slightly, and whispered, "You're not dying, not now, not after I pulled you out." Suddenly, her body jerked. Her fingers curled into the moss, and she gasped for air, her glowing eyes open for a second, staring at him with fear and confusion. Then she tried to speak, but no words came, only a weak rasp. Jack leaned closer. "Don't talk, just breathe." He could see the struggle in her eyes, as if she wanted to fight, but the poison was stronger. She gripped his wrist weakly, her touch cold and trembling. Then something moved behind him. Jack's instincts flared. He turned sharply, knife in hand. The jungle wasn't safe, not for a second. From the corner of his eye, he saw the ground ripple, like something big was moving under the soil. His heart pounded. Was it another plant? Or something worse? He scooped her back into his arms. She was too weak to hold on, her head resting against his chest. He needed shelter, a place to figure out what to do. He pushed through the thick vines, forcing his way deeper into the forest. Every step was a fight. The roots seemed to tangle on purpose. Slowing him, after a long push, he found a hollow tree, huge and wide like a cave. The inside was dry and glowing faintly with tiny insect-like lights. He placed the girl inside and crouched beside her, trying to think. The poison was spreading. Fast, he didn't have medicine for alien toxins, but he had something else: heat. He rubbed her arms, trying to bring warmth back into her cold skin. For a second, he thought she had stopped breathing. He leaned closer, pressing his ear to her chest. There was a faint heartbeat, slow but steady. She opened her eyes again. Just barely her lips moved, and this time, a whisper escaped. "Why? Save me." Jack blinked, surprised. "Because I couldn't let you die," he said quietly. His voice was steady, but his heart was racing. She looked at him, confused, as if she didn't understand what he meant. Her breathing slowed again, and she fell unconscious. Jack sat there, staring at her, feeling something strange. He had come here to rescue researchers, but now he had saved someone he couldn't explain. An alien girl who looked like she had seen death. Outside, the jungle growled again. The sound was low and deep, like the ground itself was alive. Jack tightened his grip on his knife. He didn't know what was coming, but he knew this wasn't over. Jack hadn't slept, not really. He sat at the edge of the hollow tree, watching the jungle like a soldier on guard. The girl lay behind him, still unconscious, but her breathing was steady now. That was something. He checked his blade again. The edge still sharp, but nicked in places from the last fight. His armor plate on the left shoulder was torn and still had plant slime hardened on it. He didn't bother cleaning it. There was no time for that, not out here. Not with the jungle watching, the sun or whatever passed for a sun on this strange planet was beginning to rise. Its light was a pale blue, barely breaking through the thick leaves above. Jack could see more clearly now, but that didn't make him feel safer. Suddenly, something cracked in the distance. Jack turned his head. Slowly, not moving his body. Years of combat had taught him not to flinch. Flinching got people killed. Another sound closer this time, like a wet rope being dragged across wood. He knew that sound. It was a vine. He stood quietly, stepping away from the girl. He drew his blade and scanned the jungle floor. It was moving. Again, the ground didn't shake, but the moss swirled like something was tunneling underneath. Then, without warning, a thick vine shot up through the earth right in front of him. It was faster than the last one. This one had learned. Jack rolled to the side. slashing at it as it came down toward him. The vine hissed and pulled back, but another came from behind. It wrapped around his leg and yanked. Jack hit the ground hard, his knife flying from his hand. The jungle came alive, more vines burst through. The soil, reaching for him, for the girl, for anything warm. The plant wasn't just a creature, it was a system. It had roots, it had memory. It wanted what was taken from it. Jack grabbed a flare from his belt and activated it. The bright red light exploded in his hand, and he swung it like a torch. The vines flinched. Recoiling from the heat, he scrambled toward his knife, picked it up, and stood back to back with the girl. He wasn't going to let the plant take her again. The girl groaned, her body twisting weakly. She was waking up, but slowly, too slowly. Jack yelled over his shoulder, "Stay down, don't move." Another vine lunged. He ducked and sliced it midair, but 3 more came behind it. Jack was fast, but not fast enough. A vine wrapped around his chest and began to squeeze. His vision blurred. He couldn't breathe, but even through the pain. His hand moved. He reached to his boot and pulled out a small emergency charge, something he never thought he'd have to use. With one final gasp, he jammed the charge between the vine and his chest and triggered it. A shockwave burst from the device, sending electric current through the plant. The vine let go instantly. Sizzling as it fell back, Jack dropped to one knee, coughing hard. His chest hurt, his breath shallow. But he was alive, and the jungle was silent again. For now he turned and saw the girl watching him, her eyes wide, glowing softly in the dim light. Her voice was weak but clear. "You fight it." Jack gave her a tired smile. "I told you, I'm not letting it take you again." She tried to sit up, but fell back, still too weak. "It wants me, it remembers." Jack nodded slowly. He had figured that out too. This wasn't just a wild jungle, it was hunting them. She looked at him again, her voice barely a whisper. "Why help me? I'm not one of you." Jack crouched beside her, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Because I am human, and humans don't run from life. Even alien life." She stared at him, something flickering behind her tired eyes. A mix of fear, confusion, and maybe respect. Jack stood and looked into the trees. He knew this wasn't over. The jungle had learned his scent now. It wouldn't stop until it had her again, or until he burned every root to ash. And if that was what it took, then that was what he'd do, because sometimes being human wasn't about survival. It was about making sure someone else got the chance to live, even if that someone had glowing skin and spoke with stars in her voice. Asterisk, the rain didn't fall from the sky. It rose from the ground. A heavy mist, thick and wet, poured through the jungle floor like breath from a sleeping beast. Jack had seen strange weather on alien worlds, but this wasn't weather. It was a warning. The jungle wasn't hiding anymore. It was preparing inside the hollow tree. Lyra was still weak, but conscious now. She sat curled in the corner, arms wrapped around her knees, watching Jack as he rechecked his gear. Her silver hair clung to her damp skin, and her glowing eyes followed his every move. "You should leave me," she whispered. "It wants me, not you." Jack didn't answer. He pulled out his last heat stick and cracked it. Holding it out to her, she took it with shaking hands, pressed it against her skin, and let out a soft sigh. "I didn't come all this way to leave you behind," Jack said quietly, still scanning the entrance. "Besides, I'm starting to take it personally." She looked confused. "Take what personally?" "That a plant thinks it can outsmart a human," he replied with a faint smile. Then the ground trembled. It was small at first, just a soft shake like distant footsteps. But it grew stronger, deeper, heavier, until the tree itself creaked under the pressure. Jack turned to Lyra. "Can you run?" She stood slowly, legs trembling but firm. "Not far." "Then don't fall," he said. A sound like cracking wood exploded outside. The tree split open at the base, not from above, but from below. Something massive was rising through the earth. Jack pushed Lyra behind him just as the first vine broke through. But this one was different. It wasn't thin and whip-like before. It was thick, armored, and glowing with pulsing red veins. It had evolved. Jack threw a charge at its base, but the vine absorbed it like water. No explosion, no fire, just a low growl from deep within the ground. It learned, Lyra said, fear rising in her voice. It remembers what hurt it. Jack grabbed her hand. Then we teach it something new. They ran, pushing through branches and fog. Jack slashed at the vines that reached for them. But they were everywhere now, rising from trees, from roots, from the very air it seemed. A vine wrapped around Lyra's ankle and yanked her backward. She screamed, falling hard to the ground. Jack turned instantly, throwing himself at the vine with full force. His blade sank into it, but it didn't let go. He used his weight, his strength, and every bit of rage inside him. He twisted the knife, pulled, and roared until the vine finally snapped and flung back into the dark. Lyra coughed, shaking, and tried to stand again. Her leg bled a little, glowing faintly like her skin. Jack lifted her without asking and carried her in both arms. Ahead, he saw a clearing with a glowing rock formation, strange and beautiful, like the jungle had forgotten to be cruel in that one place. He ran straight for it, hoping, praying, that maybe the plant wouldn't enter sacred ground. They made it. Barely. Jack fell to his knees with her in his arms, both of them gasping for air. The vines stopped at the edge, writhing and curling, but not crossing. Lyra looked around, eyes wide with wonder. This is a spirit root. My people believe it's protected. Jack stared at the strange blue light coming from the stone. It felt warm, real, clean. Well, let's hope your people are right. The vines hissed and began to pull back slowly, fading into the jungle like shadows at dawn. Jack didn't relax, not yet. The jungle wasn't finished. It was planning again, learning again, but he had bought time. He laid Lyra down beside the rock, her breathing slowing again, but calm. She looked up at him and said, "You fought harder than anyone I've ever seen." He sat beside her, exhausted, arms shaking. "That's what humans do. We fight for people, even when we've just met them." Lyra's voice was soft. "Even if they're not human?" Jack looked at her, really looked, and smiled, especially then. Somewhere in the jungle, the plant pulsed again. It wasn't done. Not by far, but tonight it had failed. And now it knew what it was facing. A human who didn't know when to quit. Asterisk, asterisk. Asterisk. Jack stared into the glowing stone, its light washing over his tired face. The clearing was calm, but only on the surface. He could feel it, that strange pressure in the air. The quiet before something terrible. The plant wasn't finished. It had only backed off to study him, to wait for the right moment to strike again. He didn't know how long the spirit root's protection would last, but he knew it was running out, the way the vines had stopped at the edge, too neatly too. Obediently, it felt like the jungle was testing its limits. Beside him, Lyra lay still, her breathing light. Her strength had returned only slightly, and her skin was no longer glowing as brightly as before. That worried Jack. It meant the energy from the plant was still inside her, eating away. He checked his pack, counted what was left. Not much. 1 heat charge, 2 flares, a broken shock knife, and 1 emergency explosive. The explosive wasn't meant for living creatures. It was designed to crack through alien rock walls. But Jack was out of choices. Lyra opened her eyes slowly, her voice barely a whisper. "You're going to leave me." He shook his head. "No," he said firmly. "I'm going to end this." She blinked, confused. "How?" Jack looked past the edge of the clearing, to the shifting vines just beyond the light. "By going into its heart," he said. "By showing it what human fear looks like." He stood up and took one last look at her. "If I don't come back, you wait here until your people find you. I don't want you to die," she said, her eyes wide. Jack gave her a crook smile. "Then let's hope this works." He stepped beyond the spirit root's light, and the jungle responded instantly. The vines came alive, not with fury, but with purpose. They didn't attack him, not yet. They waited. They watched. Jack didn't slow down. He let them lead him. The ground changed under his feet, softer, warmer, like walking over something alive. And then he found it. A massive sinkhole opened before him, pulsing with wet breath. Red mist rolled up from the center, and the smell hit him like rot and acid mixed together. This was the core, the feeding mouth, the heart of the thing. He stepped to the edge and shouted, "You want her? Come for me instead." The plant answered. A roar shook the trees, and a dozen vines lashed out. One grabbed his arm, another his leg. He didn't fight it, not yet. He let them drag him closer, just close enough. With shaking hands, he pulled. The explosive charge from his vest. He activated it, a low hum beginning to grow, and shoved it into the largest root he could see. The plant reacted instantly. It knew. It began to pull him faster, vines tightening, trying to crush the life out of him. Jack gritted his teeth and twisted his body sideways, freeing one arm just enough to pull a flare. He lit it and jammed it into another vine. The flame burned bright and angry. The plant shrieked. That was his moment. He kicked free and threw himself backward just as the charge exploded. The sound was deafening. The jungle split open with fire and smoke. A wave of heat slammed through the trees, and the vines around him jerked wildly, burning, tearing, collapsing. Jack hit the ground hard, rolled, and didn't get up right away. His ears rang, his armor smoked, but he was still breathing. Somehow still breathing, back at the spirit root. Lyra flinched as the explosion echoed. She tried to stand, her legs shaking beneath her. Then, from the trees, Jack stumbled into view, burned, bleeding, but alive. She ran to him, or rather limped, fast enough to fall into his arms. He held her tightly, breathing hard. "It's gone," he whispered. "I felt it die." She pulled back slightly, looking at him in awe. "You did something no one on my world has ever dared." Jack smirked through cracked lips. "Yeah," he said. "That's kind of our thing." Lyra stared at him, not just with gratitude, but with something deeper. She had nearly been devoured by the jungle, and now she had seen what humanity was willing to risk to pull someone back. The vines didn't return. The mist faded. The jungle was quiet. But this silence wasn't fear. It was respect. Asterisk. The fire had gone out, but its warmth still clung to the air. Smoke drifted through the trees in lazy spirals. Vines lay dead and blackened on the ground, twitching faintly, as if trying to remember how to live. Jack sat beside Lyra at the base of the spirit root. His body was shaking, blood drying on his temple. His chest rose and fell in ragged rhythm. One hand clutched tightly over a cracked rib, but his eyes never left her. Lyra was barely conscious now. Her skin, once softly glowing, was losing its light again. Her pulse slowed, breath thin and shallow. The poison hadn't left her, even after the plant died. It had buried itself deep inside, waiting, feeding on the energy of her body. Jack touched her forehead gently, feeling the chill sink into his fingers. "No," he whispered. "You're not leaving now." Her lips moved, but no sound came. Her eyes flickered open for a second, dim and distant. Jack reached into his gear bag with trembling hands, pulling out a small medical injector, standard issue for humans in toxic zones. But it was designed for humans, and she wasn't one. He stared at it for a moment, then tossed it aside. He looked at her, really looked, and understood that she didn't need tools right now. She needed something only a human would even think to try. He leaned over her, pulled her into his lap, and gently opened her mouth. His lips pressed to hers, not for romance, but for life. He sealed her mouth, pinched her nose, and breathed. One full breath, slow and deep. Her chest lifted weakly. He breathed again and again, his mind focused only on the rhythm. Breathe in, pull back, breathe in again. The jungle around them watched silently, as if even it was unsure what this strange act meant. CP is so normal on Earth, but here it was alien, almost magical. Jack didn't stop, even when his arms trembled, even when spots danced in his vision. He counted each breath like a promise. "Come on," he whispered between breaths. "Come on, you stubborn star child." Then it happened. Lyra coughed, her body twitching sharply. Her eyes flew open, and her body jerked upright in his arms. She gasped, a long breath filling her lungs. Her skin shimmered for a moment, just faintly, but it was there, the glow returning. Jack exhaled in pure relief, falling back against the tree with a laugh that turned into a groan. His ribs were definitely broken, but he didn't care. She looked at him, eyes wide, hands pressed to her chest. What did you do to me?" "I breathed for you," he said softly. "Until you could do it yourself." Lyra looked around, as if trying to understand what had just happened. Her people didn't do that. Her species had machines, medicine, protocols, but not this, never. "This, you gave me your breath," she said, as if it were a strange, sacred thing. Jack nodded. "It's a human thing." She touched her chest, her voice shaking. "But why?" "Because you were dying," he said, "and I couldn't let that happen." For a long moment, she just stared at him. Then her hand reached up and touched his cheek. Not in romance, but reverence. "I felt your heart," she said, "when everything else was fading. That's what I heard, that beat, steady, loud, stubborn." He smiled slightly. "Yeah, we don't give up easy." From the edge of the jungle, movement stirred. Figures began to appear, tall, graceful beings with glowing eyes and robes of woven light. Lyra's people, finally arriving. They stopped when they saw the two of them. Jack with torn armor and bruised skin, Lyra alive in his arms. The eldest among them stepped forward, his voice slow and full of awe. "You brought her back?" Jack just nodded, too tired to speak. "How?" the elder asked. "Our medics failed, our healers tried. What did you do?" Jack looked at them, then at Lyra. "I gave her what I had left," he said. "Not science, not tech, just breath and a heartbeat." The aliens stood in silence, something shifting in their faces, respect, maybe even something close to wonder. Lyra stood on her own now, her legs strong again. She turned to her people and said only one thing: "This human saved me, not with weapons, not with machines, but with himself." The wind moved through the trees again, not with malice, but with calm, and for the first time, the jungle didn't feel like it wanted to devour them. It felt like it was listening. The jungle had stopped whispering. The air was no longer thick with threat. The vines no longer moved like claws in the dark. Something had changed, not in the trees or the soil, but in the way the world looked at one human man. Jack stood the edge of the spirit root, cleaned up as best he could. His armor was still scorched, torn, and stained with dried green blood, but he stood tall. His breath was slow, steady, even though every muscle in his body ached. Before him stood the elders, tall and glowing. Each wore long robes woven with threads of starlight, and their eyes shimmered like calm oceans. Lyra stood beside him now, fully recovered, her skin glowing brighter than before, but softer too, something peaceful in her gaze. A circle had formed, dozens of her people surrounding them in silence, not in fear or judgment, but in something more difficult to name. The lead elder stepped forward, holding a curved staff made from a living crystal. It pulsed with soft blue light as he spoke. "You were not summoned here," he said slowly. "You were not trained in our ways, nor shaped by our customs." Jack gave a quiet shrug. "Nope," he replied. "Just got dropped in like always." "And yet," the elder continued, "you faced the oldest predator of our world, one that no warrior of ours ever survived. You did not run. You bled for one who was not your kind. You gave her your breath when her own failed." Jack shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't do it to be honored," Lyra spoke then, her voice firm and calm. "He did it because he could, because he chose to. That is why it matters." The elder raised the staff toward Jack. "By our laws, you are now Cotter, a title reserved for those who give more than they take, protect more than they harm. You will be remembered in the songs of stone and sky." Jack blinked, confused. "Wait, what does that mean exactly?" Lyra smiled gently. "It means they see you as one of us now, not just visitor, not just survivor, but family. A murmur moved through the crowd, a sound like leaves rustling, soft and full of wonder. Jack looked around, then laughed, tired and dry. Well, that's a first. The elder lowered the staff. Is there anything you wish in return? Jack paused, looking at the strange glowing world around him. The tall beings who watched with such awe, and then finally at Lyra, who met his gaze without fear, without walls. I don't need statues or songs, he said. I just want her. To live, really live, not be hunted again. Not feel afraid of the wild that should have protected her. The elder nodded slowly. Then so it shall be. A deep chime echoed from the spirit root, not from any mouth or machine, but from the ground itself, as if the world had agreed. Jack turned to Lyra. So what now? She stepped forward, reaching out to take his hand in hers. Now, she said, you walk with us if you choose. He smiled, a little crooked. Let's see if you can keep up. The circle around them opened, not out of formality, but out of respect. The crowd parted to let them pass, and as they did, the jungle bent, 2 branches lowered, leaves brushed gently against their shoulders. The wild remembered him, not as an enemy, but as something it could not consume. Behind him, a story was already being sung, not in words Jack could understand, but in rhythm, in feeling, in a sound that rose through the roots and leaves and sky itself. A song about a creature not born of their world, but one who burned brighter than any sun they knew, a human, one who pulled life back from the jaws of death, not with power, but with heart.